Admiral Thexazaran stood on the command deck of the Imperial Dreadnought Eternal Dominion, his three eyes scanning the holographic display with growing confusion. The data made no sense. His sensor officer had called him from his quarters 30 minutes ago, and now he understood why the junior officer's voice had trembled with uncertainty. "Show me again," Thexazaran commanded, his tail swishing behind him in agitation. The hologram flickered and reformed, displaying a cluster of 10,000 objects moving through space at the edge of Korvaxian territory. They were ships clearly artificial, but their energy signatures were all wrong. No antimatter reactions, no quantum fold distortions, no warp bubble formations. Instead, the sensors detected primitive chemical combustion and what appeared to be controlled fusion reactions. "This cannot be correct," Thexazaran muttered. "Run full diagnostics on all sensor arrays." His crew scrambled to obey. The Korvaxian Empire had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years, conquering 47 different species and cataloging thousands more. Their sensor technology was the finest in known space, capable of detecting a single ship across an entire sector. The arrays had never malfunctioned before. 20 minutes later, his chief engineer approached with her head lowered in submission. "Admiral, all systems are functioning perfectly. The readings are accurate." Thexazaran felt his blood run cold. If the sensors were correct, then something impossible was approaching his territory. Ships moving at velocities that should require advanced FTL technology, yet using engines that belonged in a museum. He pulled up the tactical analysis and his confusion deepened. The fleet formation was unlike anything in the Imperial database. The ships maintained precise distances from each other, moving in coordinated patterns that suggested military discipline. But their arrangement didn't match any known tactical doctrine. Some vessels were massive, easily the size of Imperial battlecruisers. Others were smaller, darting between the larger ships like schools of fish. Communications broadcast standard greeting protocols on all frequencies, Thexazaran ordered. "Demand immediate identification and statement of purpose." The communications officer worked her console, sending out messages in all 47 known galactic languages. Minutes passed. Then an hour. No response came from the approaching armada. Thexazaran summoned his senior staff to the war room. The holographic table displayed the unknown fleet in stunning detail, each ship rendered as a blinking red icon against the starfield. His officers gathered around, their expressions ranging from curiosity to concern. "Theories," Thexazaran demanded. Captain Vixalor, his intelligence officer, spoke first. "Admiral, I have reviewed every species in our database. Nothing matches these signatures. However, the propulsion systems resemble ancient pre-FTL technology. I believe we may be dealing with a sleeper ship civilization." "Explain," Thexazaran said. "There are legends of species that built generation ships before discovering FTL travel. Massive vessels designed to cross interstellar distances over centuries or millennia. Perhaps this is an ancient colony fleet awakening from stasis after a long journey." Another officer shook his head. "But the energy output doesn't match. These ships are moving too fast for conventional drives, and there are too many of them. A generation fleet would number in the dozens at most, not thousands." The debate continued for another hour, with no clear answers emerging. Thexazaran listened to his officers argue, feeling frustration build in his chest. The Korvaxian Empire didn't tolerate mysteries. They solved them, cataloged them, and conquered them. Finally, he made his decision. "Prepare Battle Group Theta. 1,000 warships, full weapons and shields. We will meet this fleet with overwhelming force and demand their immediate surrender." His officers snapped to attention. This was familiar ground. The Empire had used this strategy countless times before. Show strength, demonstrate superiority, and watch primitive species crumble before Korvaxian might. "Admiral, should we investigate further before committing forces?" his intelligence officer asked carefully. "We know nothing about these ships or their capabilities." Thexazaran's expression hardened. "Captain, I have fought in 23 campaigns across this galaxy. I have seen every type of weapon, every form of shield, every tactical formation. No species has ever withstood the might of a Korvaxian battle group. These unknown vessels, whoever they are, will be no different." He turned back to the hologram, studying the approaching fleet with the confidence of 3 decades of military service. "Besides, look at their technology. Chemical rockets and fusion drives. We abandoned such primitive systems 2,000 years ago. Whatever species this is, they are technologically inferior. They will see our fleet and submit immediately, as all others have done. The battle group assembled within 6 hours. 1,000 warships ranging from nimble destroyers to massive dreadnoughts formed up in standard intimidation formation. It was a wall of metal and energy shields, bristling with plasma cannons and missile launchers. The formation had broken the spirit of entire civilizations before a single shot was fired. Thexazarun watched from his flagship as the battle group engaged their faster-than-light drives, preparing to meet the unknown fleet at the border of Korvaxian space. His crew moved with practiced efficiency, each officer confident in their role. The Empire had never lost a first-contact engagement, not once in 3,000 years. Admiral, Imperial Command is requesting regular updates, his communications officer reported. They want detailed sensor readings of the unknown vessels. Tell them they'll have their readings soon enough, Thexazarun replied. Once these primitives see our might, they'll either surrender or be destroyed. Either way, we'll have plenty of data to send back. As the battle group jumped to FTL, Thexazarun allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. This would be another easy victory for his record. Perhaps the Emperor would grant him governorship of a new sector as a reward. He'd been hoping for a position closer to the Imperial core worlds, away from the frontier. The fleet dropped out of FTL at the designated coordinates, and Thexazarun's bridge crew immediately began active scanning of the unknown vessels. Now that they were closer, the sensors could penetrate deeper, revealing more details about the mysterious armada. What they found made no sense at all. The ships had no energy shields. Their armor appeared to be simple metal alloys, layers upon layers of it, but nothing that should withstand modern weapons. They carried what looked like kinetic weapons, projectile launchers that belonged in ancient history texts. Some vessels bristled with tubes that sensor analysis identified as chemical rocket systems. Admiral, these ships are defenseless, his tactical officer reported with barely concealed amusement. They have no shield generators at all. Their armor is primitive. Their weapons are obsolete. A single volley from our fleet would destroy them by the hundreds. Thexazarun studied the data, his confusion giving way to disappointment. He'd hoped for a challenging opponent, perhaps an ancient enemy awakening to test the Empire's strength. Instead, he'd found what appeared to be a species still learning to build spacecraft. Continue with standard protocols, he ordered. Full intimidation display. Activate all weapon systems. Raise shields to maximum. Show them what real power looks like. The Korvaxian battle group lit up like 1,000 angry stars, every weapon hot and ready, shields glowing with barely contained energy. It was a display designed to inspire terror and instant submission. The unknown fleet continued its approach, maintaining the same speed and formation. They didn't slow down. They didn't attempt to communicate. They simply kept coming, as if the Korvaxian battle group was nothing more than empty space. Thexazarun felt a flicker of annoyance. Broadcast again, all frequencies. Demand their surrender and identification. The communications officer complied, and this time something unexpected happened. A response came back, transmitted in a language so archaic that the translation computers took several seconds to process it. When the translation appeared on Thexazarun's screen, he read it twice, certain there must be an error. Then he read it a third time, and felt ice water replace the blood in his veins. The message was simple, direct, and completely impossible. It identified the fleet as the United Terran Defense Fleet from Sol 3. From Earth. From a planet the Empire had catalogued 200 years ago as pre-FTL, primitive, and utterly insignificant. A species that barely had nuclear technology the last time Korvaxian scouts had visited their system. Humans. The Armada was human. Thexazarun stared at the message, his mind refusing to accept what his eyes were seeing. This had to be some kind of mistake. Humans didn't have FTL drives. They couldn't possibly have built an Armada. They were Deathworlders, survivors clinging to a toxic planet in a forgotten corner of the galaxy. Sir, they're demanding we withdraw from what they call quarantined space, his communications officer said quietly. The bridge had gone silent. Every officer stared at their screens, seeing the same impossible identification. Thexazarun felt his confidence wavering for the first time in decades. This made no sense. None of it made sense. But he was an Imperial Admiral, and he didn't retreat from primitives no matter what name they called themselves. Fire warning shots across their formation. Captain Velshara commanded the Imperial cruiser Righteous Vengeance, positioned in the front line of the Korvaxian battle group. She had served in the Imperial fleet for 15 years, participating in 4 conquest campaigns and dozens of first contact scenarios. She knew the script by heart. Unknown species approaches. Empire demonstrates overwhelming force, species surrenders. Empire adds another world to its domain. Today should have been no different. When Admiral Thexzarin's order came through to fire warning shots, Velshara gave the command without hesitation. 20 ships in the forward line opened fire simultaneously, sending brilliant streams of superheated plasma across the bow of the approaching human fleet. The bolts lit up the darkness of space like miniature suns, each one carrying enough energy to vaporize a small asteroid. The plasma streaked toward the human ships, and Velshara watched her tactical display with satisfaction. Now the primitives would see what they faced. Now they would turn their obsolete vessels around and flee, or they would grovel and beg for mercy. The plasma bolt struck the lead human vessels, and nothing happened. Velshara blinked, certain her eyes had deceived her. She looked at her tactical officer, who stared at his screen with his mouth hanging open. The sensors showed impact, showed the temperature spikes where the plasma had struck, but the human ships continued forward without slowing, without changing course, without any apparent damage at all. "Report," Velshara demanded, her voice sharp. "Captain, the plasma bolts made contact with the enemy hulls. Energy transfer confirmed, but their armor absorbed the impact. No penetration, no significant damage, and that's impossible. Recalibrate sensors and fire again." The second volley streaked across space, and this time Velshara watched through the optical displays instead of trusting the sensors. She saw with her own eyes as the plasma struck the human vessels, saw the metal glow white-hot where the energy impacted, and watched as the ship simply tanked the hits and kept coming. "How thick is their armor?" she asked quietly. Her tactical officer worked his console frantically. "Scanning now, Captain. The outer hull appears to be layered. Multiple plates of different alloys with gaps between them. Total thickness is..." "Captain, the readings show armor depth of 5 to 7 meters on the larger vessels." Velshara felt her stomach drop. 7 meters of armor. That was insane. That was wasteful. Ships needed shields, not dead weight. Armor that thick would make the vessels slow, ponderous, easy targets. Except these ships weren't slow. They moved with purpose and precision, maintaining formation even after absorbing fire that should have crippled them. "Captain, receiving communication from the human fleet," her communications officer reported. "Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was flat, emotionless, processed through translation software that made it sound mechanical and cold. "Korvaxian vessels, you have fired upon ships of the United Terran Defense Fleet. This is your only warning. Withdraw from quarantined space immediately, or we will interpret your actions as an act of war." Velshara looked at her screen, at the human ship still advancing, and felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Uncertainty. These weren't terrified primitives. They weren't even particularly concerned. They absorbed a plasma barrage like it was a mild inconvenience. Admiral Thexzarin's voice crackled over the command channel. "All ships, full bombardment. Target their propulsion systems. Disable their vessels." The Korvaxian battle group opened fire in earnest. 1,000 warships unleashed their weapons simultaneously, filling the space between the fleets with enough firepower to glass a planet. Plasma cannons, particle beams, and guided missiles streaked toward the human armada. Velshara watched in disbelief as the human fleet altered its formation. The ships didn't scatter defensively. They didn't activate shields. Instead, they arranged themselves so that the largest vessels took the brunt of the fire, while smaller ships maneuvered behind them. It was a simple tactic, something from the earliest days of naval warfare. Battleships protecting cruisers. The plasma storm struck the human dreadnoughts, and this time the damage was visible. Armor plating glowed red, then white, then began to sublimate under the sustained bombardment. Hull sections cracked and vented atmosphere. The humans were taking damage, but they weren't stopping. "Captain, the human fleet is returning fire," her tactical officer said, his voice rising in pitch. Velshara saw it happen. The human ships didn't use energy weapons. Instead, they fired what appeared to be simple metal slugs, accelerated to tremendous velocities by electromagnetic rails. Kinetic weapons, the kind that belonged in museums. Except these projectiles moved at a significant fraction of light speed, and when they struck Korvaxian shields, something unexpected occurred. The shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, were penetrated by the solid mass traveling at relativistic speeds. The kinetic rounds punched through shields like they weren't there, striking hull armor with devastating results. Ships that had survived decades of combat were holed in seconds. Evasive maneuvers, Velshara shouted, but it was too late. A projectile struck Righteous Vengeance amidships, and the impact threw everyone on the bridge from their stations. Alarms screamed. Lights flickered. The ship shuddered like a living thing in pain. Velshara pulled herself up, tasting blood from where she'd bitten her tongue. Damage report. Sections 12 through 15 breached. Shield Generator 3 is offline. Armor penetration on decks 4 and 5, 1 hit. One kinetic round had done more damage than most pirates could manage in an entire engagement. Velshara stared at her tactical display and watched as human projectiles tore through the Korvaxian formation. Ships exploded or went dark, their power systems failing. The neat battle group formation dissolved into chaos. Captain, detecting multiple missile launches from the human fleet. Count is over 10,000 and rising. Velshara's blood ran cold. 10,000 missiles. Her point defense systems would never stop them all. No ship's defenses could handle that volume of fire. The missiles didn't follow ballistic trajectories. They moved like living things, weaving and dodging as they crossed the distance between fleets. Korvaxian point defense lasers and interceptor systems destroyed hundreds of them, but thousands more got through. When the missiles struck, they didn't explode conventionally. They were penetrators, designed to punch through armor before detonating inside the ship. Velshara watched in horror as vessels around her simply came apart from internal explosions. The missiles were smart enough to target critical systems, engines, reactors, command decks. All ships fall back. Admiral Thexazaran's voice came through, no longer confident and commanding. Now it carried a note of panic. Retreat to Rally Point Gamma. The surviving Korvaxian ships broke formation and ran, engaging their FTL drives to escape the slaughter. Velshara's ship was one of them, its engines screaming as they pushed beyond safe limits to jump away from the human fleet. As Righteous Vengeance entered FTL, Velshara caught one last glimpse of the battlefield. The space where 1,000 Imperial warships had formed up was now filled with debris and bodies. Hundreds of ships were gone, simply erased from existence in 7 minutes of combat. The human fleet continued forward, barely slowed by the engagement. The bridge was silent except for the alarms and the sound of crew members crying. Velshara had never seen a battle group defeated so quickly, so decisively. She'd never imagined it was possible. Captain, Admiral Thexazarun is requesting status reports from all surviving vessels, her communications officer said quietly. Velshara looked at her tactical display. Of the 1,000 ships that had entered the battle, only 73 had made the jump to FTL. The rest were destroyed or disabled. 927 Imperial warships lost in minutes to an enemy that shouldn't exist. Send our report, she said, her voice hollow. Include full sensor data on the human weapons and tactics. As her crew worked to compile the battle report, Velshara replayed the engagement in her mind. The humans hadn't fought like any species she'd encountered. They didn't rely on superior technology. They used old tactics, ancient weapons, simple strategies, but they used them with such brutal efficiency that none of it mattered. The Korvaxians had energy shields, so the humans used kinetic weapons. The Korvaxians had superior numbers, so the humans launched overwhelming missile swarms. The Korvaxians expected their enemies to have shields and dodge, so the humans built ships that could absorb punishment and keep fighting. It was like fighting an opponent who had studied every weakness in Korvaxian doctrine and designed their entire military to exploit those weaknesses, which, Velshara realized with growing horror, was exactly what had happened. Captain, receiving priority message from Imperial Command, her communications officer said, "The Emperor is convening an emergency session of the War Council. All surviving commanders are ordered to return to the capital immediately." Velshara acknowledged the order and set course for the Imperial homeworld. As her damaged ship limped through FTL, she wondered what the War Council would decide. Send more ships? Negotiate peace? Surrender? She looked at the casualty reports scrolling across her screen. Nearly 10,000 Korvaxian sailors dead or missing. Entire ships with all hands lost. Researcher Caxalia had spent 50 years studying species classification and threat assessment for the Corvaxian Empire. She worked in a small office deep within the Imperial archives, surrounded by data crystals containing information on every species the Empire had ever encountered. Most days were quiet, spent cataloging new discoveries or updating existing files. Most days were boring. Today was not one of those days. The emergency summons came at midnight, pulling her from sleep and ordering her immediate presence at Imperial Command. When she arrived, still adjusting her research robes, she found the building in chaos. Military officers rushed through corridors, their faces tight with worry. Automated systems beeped and chirped with incoming data. Something had gone terribly wrong. Caxalia was escorted to a secure briefing room where the Imperial War Council had assembled. Fleet admirals, generals, intelligence directors, and the Emperor's personal advisors all sat around a massive holographic table. They fell silent when she entered, every eye turning to her small frame. "Researcher Caxalia," Admiral Thexazarun said from his position at the table. His voice was strained, his posture defeated. 50 years ago, you filed a report about a species from a planet called Earth, humans. You classified their world as a Class 12 death world and recommended extreme caution in any future contact. Your report was ignored. Caxalia felt her throat go dry. She remembered that report. She'd been a young researcher then, fresh from the academy, analyzing survey data from a backwater planet called Sol 3. What she'd found had terrified her. She'd sent urgent warnings up the chain of command, warnings that disappeared into bureaucratic silence. "I remember," she said quietly. "Tell us everything," the Emperor's representative commanded. "Hold nothing back. The Empire needs to understand what we're facing." Caxalia moved to the holographic controls and pulled up her original files. The image of Earth appeared above the table, a blue and white marble spinning in space. It looked beautiful, peaceful even. Looks were deceiving. "Earth is a Class 12 death world," she began, her voice gaining strength as she fell into lecturer mode. "This is the highest classification in our threat assessment system. To understand what this means, you must understand what makes a planet hostile to life." She manipulated the hologram, highlighting different aspects of the planet. First, gravity. Earth's surface gravity is 1.7 times standard. Humans evolved in conditions that would crush most species' skeletons. Their muscles, their bones, their entire cardiovascular system is built to survive in what we would consider a high-gravity environment. Admiral Thexazarun shifted uncomfortably. Caxalia noticed several military officers exchanging glances. Second, the atmosphere. Earth's air is 21% oxygen. Do you understand what that means? Oxygen is corrosive. It's a poison to most life forms. Humans breathe it constantly. They evolved in an atmosphere that would oxidize our tissues in minutes. Their biology treats this toxic gas as fuel. She changed the hologram to show Earth's weather patterns. Third, climate extremes. Earth experiences temperature variations from -50 degrees to +50 degrees Celsius. Hurricanes with wind speeds exceeding 300 kilometers per hour. Earthquakes, volcanoes, tsunamis. The planet itself is constantly trying to kill everything that lives on it. But surely evolution would favor peaceful adaptation, one of the generals argued. Cooperation in the face of adversity. Caxalia laughed, a bitter sound. You would think so, wouldn't you? But Earth didn't create peaceful species. It created apex predators. Let me show you what humans evolved alongside. The hologram shifted to display various Earth creatures. This is a hippopotamus. It kills more humans per year than any other large animal. This is a saltwater crocodile, an ambush predator that can bite with a force of 3,700 pounds. This is a polar bear which views humans as prey. Earth is filled with megafauna that would dominate any other ecosystem. She pulled up images of smaller creatures. These are bacteria and viruses that exist on Earth, diseases that would depopulate entire star systems. Humans evolved immune systems capable of fighting thousands of different pathogens simultaneously. Their bodies are constantly at war with microscopic invaders. The room had gone silent. Caxalia could see the understanding dawning on their faces, the horrible realization of what they'd dismissed as primitive. But the worst part isn't the planet, she continued. It's what the planet created. Humans didn't just survive Earth, they conquered it. They became the apex predator of a planet filled with apex predators. Do you know how they did it? She pulled up anthropological data, images of early human history. Persistence hunting. Humans can run longer than any other creature on their planet. They would chase prey animals until the prey collapsed from exhaustion, then kill them with simple weapons. They are pursuit predators, the kind that never stops coming. They also developed pack tactics. Humans are individually weaker than many Earth predators, so they learned to hunt in coordinated groups. They communicate complex strategies in real time. They set traps. They ambush. They use terrain to their advantage. Kixalia changed the display to show human technological development. When simple weapons weren't enough, they invented better ones. Spears, bows, guns, bombs. Humans have been in a constant arms race with each other for their entire history. They didn't have natural weapons like claws or venom, so they made weapons that could kill from a distance. When we surveyed Earth 200 years ago, humans had just developed nuclear weapons. Do you understand what that means? They invented bombs that could destroy entire cities, and they used them on each other. Humans have a concept called mutually assured destruction. They build weapons capable of ending their own species just to make sure their enemies don't win. The Emperor's representative leaned forward. If they're so violent, why haven't they destroyed themselves? Because they're also capable of extreme cooperation when facing external threats, Kixalia explained. Humans form alliances, build nations, create complex social structures. They can put aside their differences when they identify a common enemy. And right now the Korvaxian Empire is that common enemy. She pulled up the recent battle reports from Admiral Thex's Arun's engagement. Look at their weapons. Kinetic projectiles accelerated to relativistic speeds. Simple physics turned into devastating weapons. Missile swarms with independent guidance systems hunting prey like Earth's pack predators. Armor built in layers like the shells of Earth's turtles or the hides of Earth's elephants. Humans didn't follow our technological path because they didn't need to. We develop shields because we're fragile. We use energy weapons because they're elegant. Humans built weapons designed to kill other humans and human armor designed to stop human weapons. They optimized their military for fighting the most dangerous enemy they could imagine, themselves. Admiral Thexazaran spoke up, his voice quiet. In the battle, their ships absorbed plasma fire that should have vaporized them. They kept coming even after taking catastrophic damage. How is that possible? Kixalia nodded. Redundancy. Every human system has backup systems. Their ships are compartmentalized, so damage to one section doesn't doom the entire vessel. It's the same principle as their biology. Humans can survive losing limbs, organs, significant blood volume. Their bodies are designed to keep fighting even when catastrophically damaged. She pulled up data on human psychology. There's something else you need to understand. Humans have a trait they call stubbornness. When threatened, they don't retreat. They double down. They dig in. They refuse to give up even when logically they should surrender. Earth created a species that views death as preferable to submission. This is madness, one of the generals said. No species can function like that. They would tear themselves apart. They almost did several times, Kixalia admitted. But they also created art, music, literature, philosophy. Humans are contradictions. They're capable of terrible violence and incredible compassion. They wage wars and then rebuild their enemies. They're the most dangerous species I've ever studied, because you never know which aspect you'll face. She turned back to the hologram, pulling up the most recent intelligence reports. But here's what should truly terrify you. When we surveyed Earth 200 years ago, humans were confined to one planet. They had primitive spacecraft and nuclear weapons. We cataloged them as pre-FTL and moved on. We assumed they would follow the same development path as every other species. Discover FTL drives, join the galactic community, be absorbed into the Empire. We were wrong. Kixalia displayed new data, information gathered from the recent battle. These ships use chemical rockets and fusion drives. Ancient technology, primitive by our standards. But the ships are here in our territory, thousands of light years from Earth. How? The room was silent. Finally, the Emperor's representative spoke. How? Generation ships, Kixalia said simply. Humans didn't wait to discover FTL. They built massive vessels designed to travel for decades or centuries. They loaded them with colonists, supplies, and everything needed to establish new worlds. They spread through space the slow way, one system at a time. She pulled up star charts highlighting systems near human territory. While we ignored them, General Krasthor had commanded armies for 40 years, winning battles on 30 different worlds. He was the Empire's greatest military strategist. the architect of victories that were studied in war colleges across Corvaxian space. When the Emperor summoned him to take command of the Imperial response to the human invasion, Krasthor accepted with absolute confidence. Now 2 weeks later, that confidence was bleeding away with every casualty report. He stood in the command center of the Imperial flagship Inevitable Victory, surrounded by holographic displays showing 5 different star systems simultaneously. Each system was a battlefield, each one showing the same pattern. Corvaxian forces outnumbered the humans 500 to 1. The humans were winning anyway. Report from Battle Group Omega, his communications officer announced. They've engaged the human fleet at the Tarkus system. Initial contact shows the humans using the same tactics as previous engagements. Kinetic weapons, missile swarms, heavy armor doctrine. Krasthor watched the tactical display update in real time. Battle Group Omega had 3,000 warships, a force capable of conquering entire civilizations. They'd formed the standard Corvaxian battle wall, shields overlapping to create an impenetrable barrier of energy. It was a formation that had never failed. He watched it fail in 12 minutes. The humans didn't try to penetrate the shield wall. Instead, they sent missile swarms around it, forcing the Corvaxian ships to break formation to engage the threats. Once the wall was disrupted, human kinetic weapons punched through individual shields with contemptuous ease. Ships that survived the first barrage found themselves swarmed by smaller human vessels that darted in close, too close for capital ship weapons to track effectively. Battle Group Omega is requesting permission to withdraw, the communications officer said quietly. Denied, Krasthor replied, though the word tasted like ashes. Tell them to hold position and inflict maximum casualties. He knew what would happen next. Battle Group Omega would fight bravely, die heroically, and accomplish nothing strategically meaningful. The humans would lose maybe 50 ships while destroying 3,000 Corvaxian vessels. It was a terrible exchange rate, and it was happening in 5 systems simultaneously. General, we're receiving fragmentary reports from the Proxima engagement. His intelligence officer interrupted. The humans are boarding our vessels. Krasthor's head snapped around. Boarding? That's suicide. Our ships have automated defenses, toxic atmospheric mixtures specifically designed to kill intruders. Yes, sir. The humans are wearing powered armor suits, self-contained atmosphere, enhanced strength, integrated weapons. They're breaching our hulls with shaped charges and fighting through deck by deck. The holographic display shifted to show security footage from a Corvaxian cruiser. Krasthor watched in disbelief as armored human soldiers moved through corridors that were pumped full of chlorine gas. The gas should have killed them in seconds. Instead, they moved with purpose and precision, their suits protecting them completely. The footage showed automated defense turrets opening fire. Plasma bolts struck the human armor and failed to penetrate. The humans returned fire with chemical projectile weapons, primitive bullets that punched through the turret's armor plating. When Corvaxian crew members tried to defend their ship with personal weapons, the humans simply walked through the fire and killed them at close range. This is impossible, Krasthor muttered. Boarding actions haven't been viable for 2,000 years. Our defenses make it impractical. Apparently humans don't care about practical, his intelligence officer replied dryly. They're taking our ships as prizes, killing the crews, and then using our own vessels against us. Krasthor pulled up more tactical data, looking for patterns, for weaknesses, for anything he could exploit. What he found terrified him more than any defeat. The humans were adapting. In the first engagements, the Corvaxian fleet used concentrated plasma barrages. The humans responded by adding more armor. When the Corvaxians tried missile interceptors, the humans programmed their missiles to use evasive maneuvers. When the Corvaxians attempted flanking actions, the humans anticipated the moves and countered them. Every battle, every engagement, the humans learned and adjusted. They fought like they were evolving in real time, discarding tactics that didn't work and refining ones that did. It was the most terrifying thing Krasthor had ever witnessed. Sir, Admiral Vexarin is requesting permission to use forbidden weapons, his weapons officer said carefully. Biological agents, nanomachine swarms, reality distortion bombs. The treaties prohibit their use, but in the face of this threat, no, Krasthor said firmly. If we use forbidden weapons, we lose the moral authority that holds the Empire together. Our subject species are watching this conflict. If we show we're willing to commit atrocities, they'll rebel. Then what do we do, General? We're losing. Every day we lose more ships. Every battle costs us hundreds of vessels while the humans lose dozens. At this rate, they'll reach the capital in 3 months. Krasithor stared at the displays, at the red icons representing destroyed Korvaxian ships, at the remorseless advance of the human fleets. He'd spent his entire career studying military strategy, mastering the art of coordinated fleet actions and overwhelming force. Everything he knew was useless against an enemy that refused to follow established rules. "Pull up everything we know about human tactics," he ordered. "I need to understand how they think." His staff compiled the data, and Krasithor spent hours analyzing it. Slowly, a picture emerged that made his blood run cold. Human military doctrine wasn't based on elegant formations or technological superiority. It was based on controlled chaos. They divided their forces into independent units that could operate without central command. Each ship, each squadron, each battle group could make its own decisions, adapt to local conditions and exploit emerging opportunities. When Korvaxian commanders died, their fleets fell apart because orders came from the top down. When human commanders died, their fleets kept fighting because every captain could think for themselves. The humans had built a military that was anti-fragile, that got stronger under stress, that turned chaos into an advantage. They fight like their planet, Krasithor realized aloud. Earth is chaos. Constant change, constant threat, constant adaptation. Humans learned warfare from nature itself. He pulled up records of human history, information gathered from their broadcasts and databases. What he found was 200,000 years of nearly continuous warfare. Humans fought with rocks and sticks, then with bronze and iron, then with gunpowder and nuclear weapons. They'd refined the art of killing into a science, and they'd done it fighting the most dangerous opponent possible, each other. Every tactic the humans used had been tested in thousands of Earth's wars. Every strategy had been refined through trial and error across millennia. The Korvaxian Empire had 3,000 years of military tradition. Humans had 200,000 years of evolution as persistence hunters and pack predators. "Sir, Battle Group Omega has been destroyed," the communications officer reported. "Total casualties 3,100 ships. Estimated human losses 47 vessels." Krasithor closed his eyes. Another 3,000 ships gone. Another 100,000 sailors dead. And for what? To destroy fewer than 50 human ships in return. "General, we're receiving a communication from one of the human vessels," his communications officer said. "They're broadcasting on open channels. The message is unusual. Play it." The audio crackled to life, and a human voice spoke in perfect Korvaxian. "This is Captain Martinez of the UTDF destroyer Persistent. To all Korvaxian forces, we don't want to kill you. We want you to go home. Every ship you send against us is a ship full of people who won't see their families again. Every battle is thousands of lives wasted. Withdraw from this conflict. Go home, live." The message repeated several times, then cut off. Krasithor's command center was silent. A human ship was broadcasting surrender terms to the Korvaxian fleet. The audacity was staggering. "Sir, what do we do?" his executive officer asked. Krasithor looked at the tactical displays, at the overwhelming human advantage in every engagement despite being outnumbered hundreds to one. He thought about the 3,000 ships just lost, about the thousands of battles ahead, about the inevitable conclusion of this conflict. "Send a message to Imperial Command," he said slowly. "Tell them I need authorization to begin strategic withdrawal from all current engagements. We need to consolidate our forces and develop new tactics." "Sir, that's tantamount to admitting defeat," his executive officer protested. "No," Krasithor replied. "It's admitting reality. We're fighting an enemy that specializes in prolonged conflicts. An enemy that accepts casualties as the price of victory. An enemy that never stops, never retreats, never surrenders. If we continue fighting the way we have been, we'll lose our entire fleet within months." He pulled up casualty projections, showing the mathematical inevitability of Korvaxian defeat. "Look at the numbers. Really look at them. We've lost 60% of engaged forces in 2 weeks. The humans have lost less than 5% of their fleet. They're not just winning, they're dominating. And they're doing it with technology we abandoned millennia ago. But we have 5 million ships." Emperor Vaxathun sat on the throne that his ancestors had occupied for 3,000 years, watching his empire crumble. The holographic displays surrounding him showed a story of systematic defeat. Red icons marked destroyed battle groups. Yellow icons showed systems under human blockade. Blue icons representing secure Corvaxian territory were disappearing by the day. In 6 weeks, the humans had destroyed nearly 2 million Imperial ships. The exchange rate had actually improved to 4 Corvaxian vessels lost for every human ship destroyed. His generals called this progress. Vax Thun called it mathematics leading to extinction. Your Imperial Majesty, his chief advisor said quietly, the human fleet has reached the Corvaxian home system. They're establishing a blockade perimeter. Vax Thun felt something he'd never experienced before as emperor. Fear. Not for himself, but for his people. The humans had come to his doorstep and they hadn't even deployed their full strength. Intelligence estimates suggested the human fleet numbered around 50,000 ships. They destroyed 2 million Corvaxian vessels while losing fewer than 5,000 of their own. Have they made any demands? Vax Thun asked. No, Your Majesty. They simply sit at the edge of the system and wait. Our scientists estimate they have enough supplies to maintain the blockade for years. Years. The word hung in the air like poison. The Corvaxian homeworld needed imports from a dozen systems to sustain its population. Food, medicine, raw materials all flowed through trade routes that the humans now controlled. Within months, people would start dying from shortages. Broadcast a message to the human fleet, Vax Thun ordered. Tell them I wish to negotiate. The throne room fell silent. Courtiers and military officers stared at their emperor in shock. The Corvaxian Empire did not negotiate. The empire conquered or destroyed. Negotiation implied equality, and the empire acknowledged no equals. Your Majesty, this is unprecedented, his military commander protested. The empire has never negotiated with primitives. These primitives have killed millions of our people and destroyed half our fleet. Vax Thun snapped. I think we can make an exception. The message was sent, and surprisingly, the humans responded within hours. A single unarmed shuttle requested permission to land at the Imperial Palace. Vax Thun granted it, though his security forces surrounded the landing pad with enough firepower to level a city. The shuttle landed with simple efficiency, no fanfare or display. When the hatch opened, 3 humans emerged wearing formal diplomatic attire rather than military uniforms. They were smaller than Corvaxians, standing about 2/3 the height of an average Imperial citizen. They looked fragile, almost harmless. Vax Thun knew better now. These creatures might look weak, but they came from a world that killed for sport. They'd evolved in gravity that would crush most species. They breathed poison and called it air. The lead human, a female with gray hair and dark skin, bowed respectfully. Emperor Vax Thun, I am Ambassador Chen of the United Terran Federation. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us. I did not have much choice, Vax Thun replied honestly. Your fleet has my homeworld blockaded. Yes, Ambassador Chen agreed without apology. Let's discuss why that happened. They moved to a conference room, a neutral space where the Emperor could speak without the weight of the throne room's formality. Vax Thun studied the humans carefully. Ambassador Chen moved with calm confidence, her 2 companions flanking her like guards despite being unarmed. 200 years ago, Chen began, your scouts visited Earth. They cataloged us as primitive, pre-FTL, and ultimately unimportant. They left without making contact, assuming we would never pose a threat to the Empire. That was our mistake, Vax Thun admitted. Yes, it was, because while you forgot about us, we remembered you. Your ships appeared in our skies, scanned our planet, and left. We knew then that we weren't alone in the universe. We also knew that whoever was out here had technology far beyond ours. Chen pulled up a holographic display showing Earth's solar system. We had a choice. Wait and hope you were friendly, or prepare for the possibility that you weren't. We chose to prepare. The display expanded, showing the timeline of human expansion. We didn't have faster-than-light travel, so we built generation ships. Massive vessels that could sustain populations for decades or centuries. We sent them to nearby stars, establishing colonies on every habitable world we could find. Each colony became self-sufficient, Chen continued. Each one built its own ships, its own defenses, its own industry. We spread through space like a fungus, slow but inevitable, and all the while we watched you. New images appeared showing Corvaxian ships conducting raids on other species. We saw how the Empire operated. You'd appear in a system, demand surrender, and conquer anyone who refused. 47 species absorbed into your empire. 47 civilizations destroyed or enslaved. We realized something important, Chen said, her voice hard. You were eventually going to notice us again. And when you did, you'd try to conquer us too. So we prepared for that day. Vaxthun felt anger rising. So this invasion is preemptive? You attacked us because of what we might do? No, Chen replied calmly. We didn't invade. We responded to your aggression. 6 weeks ago, your fleet entered our quarantine zone. We warned you to withdraw. You fired on our ships instead. Everything that followed is a consequence of that decision. She leaned forward, her eyes meeting Vaxthun's without fear. Your Admiral Thexarun believed we were primitives who would scatter at the first show of force. He was wrong. We're Deathworlders, Emperor. Earth taught us that survival requires strength, adaptability, and the willingness to do whatever is necessary. You've killed millions of our people, Vaxthun said quietly. And we grieve for every one of them, Chen replied, sounding sincere. We don't enjoy killing, but we're very good at it when necessary. Earth made sure of that. She gestured to the holographic display showing the blockaded homeworld. We could destroy this planet. Our kinetic weapons could glass every city. Our biological weapons could sterilize the entire surface. We have the capability, and, after what your empire has done to other species, arguably the justification. Vaxthun felt his heart's pounding. But you won't? No, Chen agreed. Because unlike the empire, we believe in proportional response. You threatened our colonies. We've neutralized that threat. Now we can discuss terms. What terms? Vaxthun asked, dreading the answer. Chen pulled up a document, broadcasting it to the room's displays. First, the Corvaxian Empire will dissolve. Your conquered territories will be released and granted full independence. Any species that wishes to join a mutual defense pact may do so, but there will be no more forced subjugation. You're demanding the end of the empire, Vaxthun said flatly. We're demanding the end of imperial conquest, Chen corrected. The Corvaxian people can maintain their own government, their own society, their own culture. But they can't maintain an empire built on the backs of enslaved species. Second, she continued, war crimes trials. Anyone involved in the conquest or oppression of other species will face justice. This includes military commanders, governors, and yes, potentially you, Emperor. Vaxthun stood, anger overcoming fear. You want me to stand trial? Like a common criminal? You ordered the conquest of 47 civilizations, Chen replied, her voice like ice. How many billions died because of those orders? How many species were wiped out? Yes, Emperor, you'll stand trial. If you're found guilty, you'll face consequences. That's what justice means. And if I refuse these terms? Chen's expression didn't change. Then we continue the blockade, we wait. We're very good at waiting, Emperor. Humans once hunted prey by following it for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. We can sit out here for years if necessary. Can your people? Vaxthun looked at his advisors, seeing the defeat in their faces. They all knew the truth. The Empire couldn't win this war. Every battle just added to the casualty count. The humans had already demonstrated they could sustain a prolonged conflict. The Empire could not. If I agree, he said slowly, what happens to my people? The Corvaxians, who depend on the Empire for survival? They'll be fine, Chen assured him. We're not interested in revenge, Emperor. We want peace. The Corvaxian homeworld will receive aid during the transition. Food, medicine, whatever is needed. But the days of conquest are over. Third term, she continued, the formation of a galactic cooperative, a federation of free species working together for mutual benefit. Humans will contribute our technology, our resources, and our military for collective defense, but every member species has equal say in decisions. You want to replace the Empire with a democracy? Vaxthun asked incredulously. We want to replace tyranny with cooperation, Chen said. Democracy is just the most efficient way we've found to do that. Look, Emperor, we know the transition won't be easy. 3,000 years of imperial rule don't disappear overnight. But the alternative is continued war, continued death, and eventual collapse anyway. Vaxthun sank back into his chair, feeling the weight of 3,000 years of history pressing down on him. His ancestors had built an empire that spanned the galaxy. They'd believed in Corvaxian superiority, in the divine right to rule lesser species.